Okay, folks, we're going to make a start. We're just running a few minutes over. So I'd like to welcome us all to our Lunchtime Series. This is our fifth. A lot of you would be involved in the previous four. We've done topics on internalized oppression and shame, dual diagnosis, racism and discrimination, interfamily conflict, and the one that we're doing today is suicide. But before I go any further, I want to talk about a few house rules just in case anything nasty happens. There's green men, as you can see on the walls, so if anything happens, they may go that way in an orderly fashion. And for respect for the three speakers which I'll be introducing in a few minutes, if everyone can either switch off their phones or put it on silent entirely. Okay? So what I want to talk about first is something that might not know where this is coming from. Back in 2019 here in the Garden County of Wicklow, we done a recent analysis study about travellers in terms of health. This is the report. Now this is the report 2019, but in 2021 November, when we had a break in lockdown, in COVID-19, we had a very, very good launch with the HSE as partners of the learning. And this is what we were left with, is this document. And the reason why we're okay to talk about the topic that we're going to be dealing with today is suicide, because it's a massive to-do about travellers up and down the country. We feel comfortable because 99.9% this is traveller proof. So between traveller men and traveller women, they engaged. We set up a steering group from this report, and the steering group of a lot of experienced people, and I just want to mention them because I feel that they need to be mentioned. So we have Wicklow Travellers Group in the form of Aileen, colleague. We have Susan McCarthy, which is representing the National Council Service. We have our two colleagues from Wicklow Travellers Group, Christy and Rosie. We also have the primary healthcare, which unfortunately is sadly Catherine can't make it today. She picked up the virus. And also we have, and he's walking around there, is our designated mental health worker for the county and doing absolutely a wonderful job. You can even learn about later after. Peter Pippolani. So that leaves just one person, and that's myself. I head up the steering group myself. So like I said, what I would call, you don't let me say that, two VIPs that have made the long journeys. We've Bernie Power, I just want to start off with a presentation. And Bernie comes from Kilkenny, and he's going to talk about his experience in relation to the topic we're talking about, which is suicide. And over here, we have Max Casey, and she's come all the way from Tipperary, and Max is going to give her piece around suicide as well. And then later on, when we get the presentations on the way, we can open it up to the floor, and I want people to engage that way wherever you want to say. If people here today would feel down in any way, we've got plenty of people and staff, if they need to go out and talk to someone, that's what we're here for, because the topic is very sad. We're in a small community, and I'm going to stop now, if I may, and I'm going to start with Bernie Power. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I suppose I'm just going to kind of tell my own story, and through my story, I suppose, hopefully it'll show people that mental health is not something that is to be shameful about, or I suppose embarrassed about, and especially men, I suppose, as we're meant to be seen as these macho style masculine men that's not meant to ask for help or to be seen as weak if you ask for help. I can assure you that my family is more than happy to accept me that I have mental health problems rather than going to see me in a graveyard every day. They're more than happy that I ask for help. If they want to say something to me, they can just come down to the house or ring me up and say it to me rather than going standing at a grave saying it to me. And I suppose my children are more than happy that they have their daddy there to go to their football matches and hurling matches and stuff with them. So my story is basically the same as a lot of other people with mental health issues. I have a very, very good family, a very strong, supportive family. I would have grew up in a community where we probably would have been the first travellers that would have been in the town or the village. I went to national school in the village. I went to secondary school 2 mile out the road. But I suppose I would have first started suffering with mental health when I was about 15, 14 or 15, I suppose. I would have known that I was always different from most of my friends, but it wasn't until I suppose I was old enough to realise that it was adults that were making me more aware that I was different rather than me or any of my friends. And it was adults from both the settled community and the traveller community. I would have been probably going to school on a Monday to a Friday, living in what I suppose is accepted as the normal life. And then from a Friday evening to a Sunday, I was going back into traveller life, going to markets and doing whatever I was doing. And that would have been probably the first experience I would have had really of racism or anything like that would have been your typical schoolyard bullying or whatever, just being called names and stuff. And every child gets called names at some stage in school, or everyone gets bullied. But for me, it was starting to become a constant thing. I suppose I remember going home asking my mother why was other children being asked to go to houses and places like that and back like to parties and stuff, and I was never asked. So yeah, I got heavily involved playing sports. Hurling and football became a massive part of my life. I would have hurled with Kilkenny up as far as under 17. I got selected to go to the Man United soccer schools in Ireland. There was 150 of us selected to go to it. And I speak about this a bit in the documentary about Patrick. I said in it about like how on the hurling pitch I felt free. Like that was genuinely the only place in me growing up that I felt that I could never be judged. But the minute I walked off the hurling pitch, I was felt judged straight away before I even got back into the dressing room. So that was kind of my childhood growing up. As I said, family, parents, grandparents, everyone, as much love and support as any child would ever need. I got to 17 then, and I had to get an operation on my knee, so that was the end of the hurling and football and stuff. And I suppose that's where my problem started then. I was getting the usual questions, and I suppose being told, you're 17 now, you're nearly 18, you nearly want to be looking to get married now and settle down, and no more interest in getting married now than the man in the moon, to be honest. So I didn't. I was trying to figure out what I wanted, whether I wanted to go to college or whether I was going to go to the markets full time or whatever. And that's when I suppose I would have first started to really experience depression and what it was like, I suppose. So I got married when I was 21. I was separated by the time I was 22. Then I suppose got into another serious relationship, and I had two beautiful little boys out of that. And during that whole time, I was from the age of 21 to 26, I was battling every single day with depression, suicidal thoughts, trying to, I suppose, fight with myself as to why I was good enough to stay alive, and then fight with myself on the other side telling me why I wasn't good enough to stay alive. I started to turn to drink, and that was the biggest regret in my life. When I was drinking, all I was doing was just escaping reality. And I can assure you, while at the time it might have felt like I was getting out of it and stuff, but it was just making things worse. Got to a stage for me where I was waking up in the morning. This was a daily routine. I was waking up in the morning, I'd have 2 cans, I'd go do what I had to do, I'd drink another can or 2 then, maybe about 12 or 1 o'clock. Come 4 or 5 o'clock, I'd have another 2 or 3 cans. I'd pull in, and I'm ashamed to say this was all while I was working and stuff. Like, I'd pull in on my way home from work, and I'd get 8 cans. I'd go home, get a shower and stuff. I'd drink another 5 or 6 cans. I'd go up to the pub, drink up there, and then I come home. And no matter how drunk I ever was, I always made sure that I had 2 cans for the following morning. I had a couple of incidents then, I suppose, kind of made me start taking notice just about where my mental health was going. I would have kind of once or twice, I would have just went off on walks. Like, there was one night where I went off, and I remember coming back to myself about 2 hours later, about 3.5 miles out the road, thinking, "Oh, the name of Jesus, after getting here, or what's after going on here?" Like, so that went on for a while, and I suppose I knew myself then that I was starting to head down a road where it was a lonely road. I was waking up in the morning and stuff, and I remember my mother coming to me, and she saying to me, "Bernie," she said, "I'm afraid," she said, "to come down to the house every morning." And I said, "Why, Mommy?" She said, "Because I don't know what I'm going to find." Like, to hear your mother saying that to you, at the time, it was, "Don't be stupid, man, will you?" But as it went on and on, what she was saying was going to become a reality. Because less than 2 weeks after she said that to me, I was out, and I was after making an attempt at suicide. So that probably from 26 or 27 up to about 30 years of age, I attempted suicide, I think it was 5 times. For instance, one of them times, I went to somewhere where really, to me, it's my favourite place in the whole world. And one of my friends, my mother and them were after ringing me, and they were after talking to me and stuff. And one of my friends rang me, and he said to me, he said, "Well, where are you?" And I was telling him anyway. I never told him where I was. But 5 minutes later, 6 minutes later, he pulled up beside me, and I'm still to this day, I'm very grateful he did, because he took something off me that definitely would have ended my life. There was numerous occasions, I suppose, that I feel that through the services and through different people, I suppose, that I would have seen as in positions that were there to kind of recognise the signs or to help me. I suppose, looking back now, I felt that they were only looking at one side of me. They were looking at a suicidal alcoholic traveller walking in, and they weren't looking at the young man with his whole life in front of him that was suffering from mental health issues. So when I was 31, I was very, very lucky after another attempt at suicide to still be alive. And my father came down to me the following morning after I got out of hospital. And he said to me, Bernie, he said, you need help with this, he said. And I remember it was like someone was after taking 30 ton off my weight just to hear my father saying them words. He was basically what he was saying was, look, I don't give a shit, sorry for my language, I don't give a shit what anyone thinks or what anyone says. He said, you need to go get help. So I spoke to him a bit more, spoke to my mother and stuff, and we decided that I'd go to treatment for alcohol. So I went out to Coomera and Galway, and I completed the 12-week course down there. But it was a saying in there that I genuinely believe to this day changed my life. A young fella, when I went in, I didn't have a problem. It was me against the world. And to be honest, I had me guard up because I automatically presumed that I was going to be treated different over being a traveller. I didn't think I was going to be give the same amount of help as other people. I didn't think there was going to be as much maybe time and effort put into my recovery as what other people was going to get. And for the first 2 weeks I was in there, I wasn't opening up. I didn't want anything to do with this at all. And the young fella was walking down the hall, and the young fella stopped me. He said, you think you're better than me, don't you? And I said, how do I think that? He said, I seen the way you looked at me, he said, when I was telling him the story, he said, about me robbing €50 on my mother. I said, well, I never robbed that man my mother, I said, as much as an alcoholic as I am, I said, I never robbed that man my mother. He said, you're a great lad, he said, you never robbed that man or no? I said, no. He said, what about her sleep? He said, all the nights, he said, that your mother was lying awake, he said, thinking about you, where were you going to be alive, what she was going to see the following morning. He said, I can give my mother back the €50. Like, can you give your mother back all the sleep that she's after losing? And he left me dumbfounded where I was standing. And that simple little statement changed my whole outlook and my whole view on life. And I remember you're allowed only a visit on a Saturday. And I remember I couldn't wait for my mother to come up. And the first thing I done when I seen her was give her a hug and a kiss and tell her I was sorry. So I suppose I completed the 12-week program, and when I came out, then I was a great lad, sure, and everything was brilliant, and there was nothing like me. About 4 or 5 weeks after that, I suppose, when the reality hit, when the demons start coming back again, and it wasn't the drink demons, it was the demons in my head again. They came back, and they probably came back stronger than ever, to be honest. So they did. So I went to my father again, and I spoke to my father, and I said, look, I said, I'm starting to struggle again. I said, but it's not through drink I'm struggling. I said, it's my old head, I said, it's all over the place. So he said to me, go talk to the doctor. He said, go and talk to the doctor. I said, what's the point of going to talk to the doctor? Like, I said, well, he's wanted to give me his tablets or that, like, and I said, that's not what I want. So I remember I went to my GP anyway, and my GP was giving me tablets, and I asked him. He didn't ask me what was going on with me, anything like that. Just said, these will do, yeah. So I said to him, I said, are they addictive? And he said, they are, yeah. He said, they can be addictive, he said. And I said, well, I'm only after coming out of an alcohol treatment centre. I said, why are you giving me tablets that's addictive, like? So I fought with them and I wouldn't take them. My mother and father fought with me, I suppose, for not taking them, but they thought I didn't want to take them for a different reason. So about 3 weeks later, the doctor rang me and he said, look, can you come in and talk to me or whatever? I went into him and I'll never forget it. And I was only saying this to Mag outside, like, the tablet that he was giving me was 250 milligram. And he wanted me to take one of them or two of them every day. And I went back to him 3 weeks later and I'm on one tablet, 5 milligram. That has absolutely no side effect as regards of addictiveness to them. And I suppose I'm lucky in one way that, and I don't mean this in the way that I think I'm better than anyone. I just think I'm lucky because of the fact that I would have went through national school and secondary school, and I suppose had the capacity to understand exactly what prescribed medication can do to people. And like one thing, and people find this very hard to believe, but one thing, no matter how much I ever drank around, I've never ever took any drugs as regards like coke, smoked any weed. I never ever done any of that. When I was drinking, I never drank shorts or wine. It was all, and I reckon that's the reason why my liver wasn't damaged. That was just all lager or cider that I was drinking. But the prescribed medication thing, I think that's something that a lot of travellers is not aware of just how addictive it can become and how it can take over your life. Because if you're addicted to something, you don't care about anything else. Like, you genuinely don't. And no matter how much you tell yourself, I'll stop tomorrow, this is the last one, it doesn't. Because it's so easy just to go. It's like, in one way, drink is the worst drug that you can possibly have, because you can just walk into a shop and buy it. It's the same with prescribed medication. And like, probably not a lot of doctors or the HSE might like hearing this, but with a lot of the young travellers that I talked at, and I suppose a lot of them that have mental health issues, going to their local GP or going to their doctor is like walking into a shop, because they'll just give you the tablets to get rid of you and get you out the door. And to be honest, like, that's a massive problem, because that affects people's mental health massively. They're going home, that can cause arguments, that can affect your ability to raise your children. That like, it has such a wide effect that travellers, that I think a lot of travellers are not aware of. So that was kind of me in a nutshell, a quick version. There's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the quick version of it. So since I started taking that tablet, don't get me wrong, I still have very, very bad days. I still go into like really lonely and dark places. But through treatment, I suppose, for the alcohol, and I'm very, very lucky to have a really good partner.
Thank God.
So I'm blessed with her. And the same with my family structure, like. But sometimes I have to take it day by day, and other times I have to take it minute by minute. But the one thing, the most important tool that I learned, and this is the one thing that I tell anyone, it doesn't matter whether you're a traveller, not a traveller, man, woman, doesn't make a difference. If you're having a bad day, talk. You don't have to go tell someone your life story. Just turn around and say to someone, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want to go for a few pucks? Do you want to go for a few kicks? One of the things that I do, and it's not even me anymore, it's kind of the people around me now, is there's a river about 5 or 6 minutes walk from the back of my house. So kind of, it's after becoming a part of my life now at this stage. So if I'm having a bad day or whatever, I'll just go walking through the fields and go up to the river for an hour or two. It's kind of my little place of peace of mind. I never really knew what peace of mind was until I started to do this. And sometimes I even come in from work and stuff, and there'll be a fishing rod in the bag left at the door for me. And that's like either my partner's way or my mother's way or someone's way of saying, listen, we can see that you're kind of getting ready to go get down on yourself, so on off you're fishing for a couple of hours there and see how you go on. But just don't be afraid to talk. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a life story. It can be just something as simple as saying, Johnny, you come for a few kicks. Johnny, you going for a game of darts. Mary, do you want a cup of tea? Because like, if we're all being honest with each other, like, we all know when the people around us aren't themselves. And we all know, like, life is not easy. Everyone has problems. Everyone has struggles. Everyone does. But sometimes we can make it that bit easier by just saying, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want to chat? Even no matter if you were never having a bad day, but if you know that someone else is having a bad day, like, said, Jesus, I had a bit of a bad old day yesterday. I was feeling very down and out with myself. And before you know it, more than likely that person is going to turn around and say, yeah, I'm having one of them old days myself there now. So I'm down and out myself there and stuff. You know, like, and I keep saying it, but talking is it's genuinely the most important thing. And not to feel you're on your own. Not to be ashamed. There's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing, like, some people, I remember me thinking and saying to my father, no, all the boys will be laughing at me, the whole country will be laughing at me. And before I knew it, 40 minutes later, I looked at Facebook and there was my father up making a video about me going to treatment. And how proud he was of me and stuff like that. You know, and I remember looking at the video saying, oh, holy hand, I'll kill him. But what he was actually doing was showing me that he's not ashamed. Mm-hmm. He was showing the whole country that he wasn't ashamed of me. Mm-hmm. And he knew that if he was the person that I thought the most of his opinion. So what he done with that video was let me know, prove to me, I suppose, in his own way, that he wasn't ashamed. That's basically my story in that, but like, one or two things about, like, everyone will say to you, go talk to psychiatrists or go talk to this, that or the other. Sometimes they're not available. Yeah. They're just not available to talk to. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes if you're going to your doctor, or like, I know, for instance, in Kilkenny, where I'm from, like, you could meet with 6 or 7 different doctors the 6 or 7 times you go. And it's very, very hard for you to build up a relationship and feel comfortable enough to tell someone, like, your most personal and intimate things, and then have to go back in the following week or 2 weeks later and see a different doctor there and go through it all again. Like, it's very hard just to walk in. You need to be able to build up trust and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the problems and again, that's probably not just travellers, that's everyone, like, that if you keep seeing the change in face every time you're going to these people that are meant to help you, well, how can you ever build up trust to trust that person to help you when you're saying to yourself, it could be gone in 2 weeks, like. Yeah. You know, you're waiting with the airfield in Kilkenny, I think, like, for one particular doctor, you could be waiting like 4 or 5 weeks to get an appointment with him. Like, that's one of the big issues. The other issues is, and this is not all doctors, or this is like not all HSE staff or like counsellors or anything like that, but there still is the stereotype there of being an Irish traveller as well. You know, you can walk in through the door, and there's places I go that I walk in through the door and I'm like, this is great. When the first 30 seconds of walking into the room, you know how your whole interaction is going to go. And there's other places you walk in and you say, yeah, I like him. Yeah, he's all right, actually. You know what, I'll have a chat with him. And like, I suppose everyone, a lot of people don't like me saying this, I suppose, and a lot of organizations mightn't agree with me when I say this,
Yeah.
but I think it's the truth. And in my case, it's definitely the truth. Travelers have to look at themselves about the pressure that they put on other members of the community, whether it be about their sexual orientation, whether gender, whether religion, belief, whatever. Like, travelers have to start looking at themselves and thinking, well, why is our young people doing this? Like, even down to the point of in some families or counties, unless you rock up in a brand new van or a brand new car, you're a nobody. Like, the pressure that that's putting on, never mind the young fella 17 or 18, but the pressure that that's putting on that young fella's father and mother. Like, you can imagine, for instance, if a man or woman has 3 children and they're between 16 and 19, and the whole stereotype of travellers meant to get married young and so on. Like, imagine the pressure that that man or woman is feeling, knowing that they have 3 weddings to pay for in the next 5 years. And they have to be the big fancy weddings to show people that they have plenty of money or their status within the community. And that man or woman might be struggling more than anyone.
That's right.
And anyone will ever know. But because of the pressure within our own community for it to be seen that you're doing well and you can afford all this, they won't talk about it. They won't say anything about it. It's the same way if a young fella wants to stay in school to do his leaving cert. Like, they're looked at and, why are you a schoolboy? You should be out working, you should be out doing the markets and stuff for yourself. It's very, very rare that you'll hear someone coming around and saying, oh, you're doing the right thing, stay in school, go to college, get a good education, get your good job. Bring your children up and get them involved in all the different sports. And when I say sport, it doesn't have to be hurling or football or boxing. Could be gymnastics, could be chess clubs, could be anything, a variety of things. But we do need to, as a community, we do need to look at the pressures because travellers is changing.
Yeah.
Like, within the last probably 15 years, I'm after seeing a massive change in the young travellers of today than me 15 years ago. Like, travellers of today is doing things, I suppose, that if I had to do it, I would have got a good telling off, I'll put it that way. And like, I think that a lot of the problem is, even with homework, and I see this myself, like, my father and mother weren't able to read or write. I think my mother went to 5th class and my father went to 6th class. But when I was going to national school, I was sent home with homework. And it was expected that my mother and father would sit down at a table and help me to do that homework. It was the same when I went into 1st or 2nd year in school. Well, I was being sent home to do homework that my mother and father were expected to help me with when we got 5th class education themselves. And that puts a lot of pressure. If you're going into secondary school and you're made feel like an idiot, I suppose, or made feel like you're less intelligent than the other young people in the room, like that plays with your mental health as well. So it does. But again, I think that comes down to the wider structures, maybe, and the wider, like, the people at the higher tables. Like, it's not that hard to figure out that if you've 2 parents at home that only did primary school education, But it's not that hard to figure out they're not going to be able to help their secondary school children when they go home with their homework. But the implications that something even that small can have on the child or the parents. All of a sudden you could have a man sitting at home thinking, he could be having a bad day, and next thing he gets into, he says, Jesus, I've never helped my child do his homework.
Yeah.
What good am I to anyone? But stuff like that is not looked at because it's taken for granted that travellers are, well look, sure, if they're not able to do their homework, we'll get them on a reduced timetable. We'll get them into small groups. We'll get them into special teachers. Travellers don't need special teachers.
Yeah.
Travellers don't need small groups, and they most definitely don't need reduced timetables.
Yeah.
Travellers' children, when it comes to school, needs a fair shot and a fair effort, and not to be looked at, well, his father is a doctor, so he's going to do better than this fella. So the structure, like, to me, they were all the kind of things that I was saying about when I was 14 and 15, when I started to struggle with depression. Like, that would have been kind of the things that I suppose would have affected me at that age.
Yeah.
Like, you would have had the usual thing, not being selected on hurling teams or whatever, and sports and that. But for me, it was kind of, I suppose, how I was being treated at 15 years of age, and other people already making their minds up about me before they even got to know me. So that's kind of me. Thanks for listening.
Thanks very much, Mary. That was very clear and passionate. Thank you very much for that. Just before I move on, folks, I was talking about the strong group earlier on, and I didn't do it by mouth, but just to a couple of other people that I didn't mention. So I'm standing here, and that's the lady from the primary healthcare, which is here today, and the other, which is our domestic work, which is from primary healthcare, and our other, Christina, which is the education worker from the Travis Needs Network. Just also like to say that it's not a 4-star workshop if you like it, but there's light refreshments as soon as you're finished. So without further ado, we'd say any questions that anyone has until after Mark's presentation, which he's going to say there now. So thank you very much, folks.
First, I want to acknowledge Bernie. I really salute you in terms of your openness and your personal story that has affected your life. And I think a lot of young travellers across Ireland and England have seen your programme, and I actually think it has saved lives. And I want to thank you. And I want to thank you personally for sharing your story. I suppose what I want to talk about is the root causes of the high suicide rates within the travel community. I think it's very, very important as travellers that we acknowledge our pain and suffering. Now, I'm very aware that there's very limited mental health services for anyone, despite whether you're from the settler community, from any Indigenous minority or ethnic minority. But for ourselves as a traveller community, I want to take you back to where it all began. In 1963, the Itinerary Report said they would actually fix travellers, make us like settled people, try and take the traveller out of us, and take us off the roadsides and make us like settled people. That particular time, they actually done was took our soul away from us. And when you take a person's identity and soul from them, you actually have no purpose of living from day to day, because you don't know your roots, you don't know the purpose of where you're living in, and you're always being constantly told that you should be settled, be normal. That's the word that we hear since we were children, our own children, and our grandchildren. And some of the story that Bernie spoke about was, from here to now, and from 1963, we have people that are trying to kill the pain of being a traveller. of being denied their culture, their identity. And when you constantly do that to a child, to an adult, it's going to have serious effects. Of course, you're going to take to addiction to kill that pain of having no self-worth, no purpose to live. Imagine if you were a child. Imagine, I just want to settle people here for a moment to acknowledge. Your 4-year-old child, you're happy, you're excited, send your 4-year-old child to school. He or she comes home after a week and that blue eye spark or that brown eye spark is gone from them. Because they know that they're not wanted. You know, it's a cut off the old cloth. I've been sent to school, they learned a different way of being able to, I suppose, I hate using the word discrimination, but prejudice. And our kids are very, very intelligent. As Bernie said, you know, we're quite intelligent people, Indigenous people of this country, and we know our level of intelligence. So we're very smart to cop on when we face discrimination and racism. So imagine you're that child, that young person, going around and not being left into a shop, be denied any services completely, and being ignored by settled people. That it's actually normal. It's actually normal in Irish society to discriminate against travellers on an everyday aspect. Now, if you take the 1963 Hightennian report now, it's been failed policy over and over again. As traveller NGOs, we've all worked tirelessly over the last 40, 50 years to bring about political change. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And we need the good political will of settled people to support us and work with us, and to understand the racism, the discrimination, and the prejudice that Irish travellers face in Irish society. I mean, if you look at what happened in Carrick Mines, where 11 people lost their lives, and actually 2 days after that, it was actually, you had settled people coming out and being anti-traveller. Even on the news, the papers, and it was accepted. That wouldn't happen to any other people in Irish society. I wouldn't think, in my perspective, it would happen. Our children had to listen to that racism, discrimination, attitude of settled people. That has to change, and we can't change it on our own. And I suppose as NGOs, as traveller NGOs, we've been working with the National Traveller Roma Inclusion Strategy, which is the second National Traveller Roma Inclusion Strategy, without bringing about very, very little change. And at the moment, I'm going to describe what it's like for travellers. We have a homeless crisis in this country for everybody, but for particularly travellers. We live in halting sites, behind big walls, out of sight and out of mind. And we are excluded from Irish society. Within that site, 100% of the travellers on that site are unemployed, very little education and very little acceptance within Irish society. And constantly, you have people inflicting drugs, addiction. They're going to turn to drugs and addiction to kill the pain of being able to try and survive from day to day. And of course, we're going to have high suicide rates within the traveller community. I mean, if one person could even answer that question in this room, in their own mind today, imagine being constantly told that you are of no worth in Irish society, that actually an animal has more human rights than you have. Imagine that message being told to you, or your children, or your community. I wonder how long will a person survive from the settler community. It's tragic, but it's the truth. And I suppose we're burying children as young as 11 years of age every day of the week. Now, as I said, I would plead to people constantly to work with us, understand our analysis of where we've come. I don't think any settled person in this room or abroad, or at a national level or internationally, intentionally ever want to harm travellers. It's done unconsciously. It's done without the lack of awareness, understanding. And it's the attitudes, growing up with the attitudes that has fed them that information through media or, wider society, or the political side has a lot to deal with it as well. And I feel that they're responsible. And I would say this, I've said this many times, that they are responsible for the deaths that we have in our community. I mean, our children spend more time now in the playground and they use that as the graveyard than they do at home, because every single day of the week we're bringing young people, young women, men, and children to bury them through suicide. I mean, how in the name of God can we say that that's acceptable? It's not acceptable. And I suppose it's really, really important that settled people in statutory agencies that has the power and will support travellers to bring about change. We can't do it by ourselves, nor should we be asked to do it by ourselves. Everybody has a responsibility for what happens to human beings in Irish society. You know, there was a time in this country where it was actually a crime to be lesbian and gay. And actually it was a crime, where women who had children out of wedlock were put behind walls, big high walls, out of sight and out of mind. Now I just want you to think for one moment what's happening to my community. My community is being put behind big walls, out of sight and out of mind. And they're dying. I can tell you we're dying. We're suffering with huge mental health issues, addiction, internalized depression. And, I'm glad that Bernard talked about internalized depression. Because at this point in time, travellers are trying to live. They're trying to hang on to live. And they're barely at the edges of the cliffs trying to hang on. I'm not talking about any individual travellers, I'm talking about the majority of travellers in Irish society. And that's a fact. If you look at all the statistics, I'm not going to quote statistics to you because you've seen them, you've read them. Now, what I am going to talk about is certain things that certain people can help here from a statutory agency. So I don't want to be quoting to the travellers. You all know, you've all experienced the pain and the suffering. And there's no need for us to keep continuing for that. But I think it's really important that we have in a site, in a small town, in a village. I come from Limerick City, I work in Tipperary town. I know the whole catchment area and I nearly know every piece of Ireland at this stage. And many of the issues that travellers face in Limerick and Tipperary, travellers face across the country, where you have crisis after crisis. It actually becomes normalised for us as a community that we actually have crisis after crisis, death after death, addiction after addiction, people internalising within families, within communities to try and stay alive. And a little bit, as Bernard said, about status, because you don't have any status, you don't have no jobs, you don't have no education, you don't have no self-worth, you don't have equal opportunities to get different programs. You have to deny your culture, your identity, if you want to get a job. So they're the real facts that we face. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about how we can bring about small change. I mean, I suppose I'm a community worker, I work on the ground like many of the community workers here. And constantly we have to cut down, we have to go onto sites where young people are cut down from trees, or they're hanging from ropes, and or they're throwing themselves into rivers. So we're the first one on the sites that are called. And I see one of the guards down there, thank you for coming. A very important person, because you're the first people we call. And sometimes we're very lucky if we get some of the good guards that will come and here, look, we have a young person here, they know the situation, they know the area, and they support us a huge amount. So I'm actually thankful to the Garda Síochána. The majority of the Garda Síochána across Ireland that I have worked with, I've been very lucky with. They've awful supported us so much. But unfortunately, when we get to the hospital and we explain to the crisis nurse, this is a severe issue. This person has tried to commit suicide on several occasions. And the guards would back us up on this, because sometimes that young person or that older person or that child would not go to hospital when we'd call the guards. And the guards would back up the report that I or anybody else would be saying. And the crisis nurse would say no, that they actually have an addiction problem. So then they go back out the door with their hours and so on or whatever. And the reality of it is that young person loses his life or that elderly person loses his life. That's the fact. And I suppose what's really, really important, and it would be just one step, if we could undo the damage that has been done to travellers, and we could look forward. I think looking to the past, it's easy for us to all talk about the wrongs, but we need to look at the rights going forward. And I think one of them is to build in a support that the THUs looks at their actions. And I think one of the most important things, and other service providers, they could actually train a traveller or a settled person that would work within the organisation, that would actually be a link between the service providers and the traveller community. Because you're talking about so many services that are called onto that site on that particular day or evening or night or whatever. And it's usually, as I said, the Garda Síochána that would actually be first to respond to the call to help. I think that's really, really important as a crisis point. And I'm talking about a crisis point. I think the second thing is we need to have counsellors and therapists on the sites, in the group housing schemes, also employed by traveller NGOs, so that they actually have the knowledge and the experience, and constantly the likes of Jim O'Brien and other people here will be able to educate them of how to engage with travellers and how to work with service providers. Now, I think, if people are serious about humanity, and I do believe that people are, and want to help. And I know it's very political that we can't get different ministers that I've campaigned, and many of my colleagues and many of travellers across Ireland have constantly campaigned for a national traveller mental health strategy to be implemented, and have been ignored, have been ignored. That's how important our young children's lives means to the political system. But I just think there's other service providers at a local level that I know would look into it in terms of their own children, their own nieces, their own nephews, their own sons and daughters. There's no settled person. I don't care where you come from, what status you come from, whether you come from upper middle class or working class or whatever class at this stage. We all have our own problems when it comes to mental health. Only thing about settled people, I would say, you get a break from it. But we constantly have it night, noon and morning. And as traveller women, we're supposed to be the giants that everyone will hold, and we'll hold them all on our shoulders. And we do as traveller women. We'll do anything to keep our children alive, our families alive, our community alive. We have the empathy, the compassion, we have the analysis and the understanding. But I just think it's really, really important to settle people. If you take one message here from me today and Bernie's story, I think you need to help us to save our children. I think, you have a responsibility as an Irish citizen of this country to hear what I'm saying. How many times have I and many of the travellers here carried coffins? I'll tell you how many coffins I've carried. No more than many of the travellers. I've carried 29 coffins of my family, my extended family, to bury them through suicide. And I'm not anyway unique. As many of the travellers here across Ireland and in the UK have suffered the same impact of what Irish society has done to us. And sometimes I've asked young traveller men and young traveller women, You know, why are you drinking today? Mag, I'm trying to kill my pain. And if I didn't drink today, Mag, I'd be hanging off that tree. And I might go to another young guy and I might say, Simon, well, what's the story? Why are you drinking, son? And he come over and chat to me, try and give up all drugs or whatever, and I'll get you a treatment centre. No, Mag, I can't stick to pain. Because remember, them young fellas and them young ones that we're talking about don't have a purpose to get out of bed. If anything happens to settle people, at least they have opportunities to bring about change in their life. We don't. We're constantly told that we have no purpose in Irish society. I can tell you we have an awful lot to contribute to Irish society. We have done and we will continue to do so against every odds that's against us. If you see and look at our traditional way of living that has been took away from us, now I see settled people making an enterprise out of it. You know, I think that me and many of my family members now bring our children and our families to see the museums that actually was a part of our culture, and it was dirty and not nice to look at, and now it's in a museum for everybody to look at. And travellers have to go pay to go and see their own culture, their own history. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I was born in that wagon, a wagon like that. My daddy made a horse's collar as a bed for me. And I'm thinking to lift that bit out for many the poor old traveller who was born at the side of the road. But I suppose I could talk here forever about the wrongs. I think we need to talk about correction. There's many of the young traveller boy and young traveller girl at the moment that's in psychiatric wards, psychiatric units. And I suppose they have suffered so much as a human being in Irish society that actually they can't cope anymore. And I suppose the institutions don't know how to deal with travellers, so they make them like zombies. And I think that has a serious effect in Irish society. It's a serious effect in individuals, a serious effect on families. I think it's very, very important that we have a liaison person employed by the local traveller NGOs that actually would liaise around Section 10, Section 12 of the Mental Health Act. Sometimes women, particularly, I'm looking at the traveller women here in this room, because you're the women and the men, we have to pull our men to help us, but we're the ones that have to go to the doctors and get the second upon to section our child, our children. Actually, that's so bad that we've cut them down on three times in one night, stay alive, and then you have to learn sections. You know, section of the Mental Health Act, and I think it's important, and being the buffer between the traveller and the statutory agency and the services. That's so important, and there's a huge gap in the services that needs to be there. I don't want to talk about money because money won't save us lives, but I think resources will. And if we could just take one thing away from today, would be, you know, please help us. And I'd ask every traveller out there, please stay with us. I am the chair of the National Traveller Mental Health Network, and I have an awful lot of colleagues that work with me at a national level, and we will not stop until we bring about political change. We've been up and down the country campaigning, bringing travellers and settled people to knock on the 8, to acknowledge the pain and suffering the travellers have faced. We'd invite you, settled people, to join us on the 8th of October in Knock to actually acknowledge what has happened to travellers in Irish society since 1963. And the unfortunate thing, I'd love to be able to sit here to say tomorrow will be a better day for us, with all the campaigning and all the lobbying and all the asking and pleading with people to help us. Unfortunately, travellers are still dying by the minute. And as I speak here today, unfortunately, we know, Bernard knows and I know, the travellers have probably died right now as we're speaking through suicide. We're not talking about hours or days or weeks now. We're talking about half an hour and 20 minutes between suicide within the tribal community. How political it is, we can't even get a count politically right now because it would put shame on the statistics of the National Mental Health or National Traveller Health Strategy in 2010. That's how political it is. And I think that's it for now. I just want to thank each and every one of you for listening to me. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, again, the project is really components are in. And I suppose we in Wicklow and when speak with here in county where we come from, over the years, and me being a traveller, I knew personally a lot of impacts that were hitting the travel community but were never ever accepted within our own community. But Bernie and Max touched on addiction. Addiction, a short few years ago, we didn't get any fellows talking about it because it just never was accepted in our society. We talked about internal change, we got a piece here, and the feedback that we got in the aftermath was absolutely second to none. We talk about suicide, which is the topic we're talking about today. Even among truckers, it was denied. We talk about the 6%, these are facts and figures from an national point of view, from a state body, the health said at 6% higher. I can say to you, and some of you speakers will agree with me, it's much, much higher than 6%. It's much, much higher. I want to say something now, probably a short time from now when there's further research, it's going to be open up more and more wherever there's a population of travellers, in every town, in every city in Ireland. It's such a small community. I reckon we're about anywhere between 42 and 45,000. But I can put so many knots and finish up with 6. So I can say 0.6% of the overall population of Ireland. But how suicide has affected every single one of them. I'm saying that here today, but I know that we're able to open up an issue that we never went before a short time ago, and suicide is going to be growing because it's happening all the time. So now we're going to open up the floor. If anyone has anything to say to our two speakers, they can speak now. Look at all the silence. Susie?
I just have a question, just in relation to your talking about, and first of all, thank you so much for both of you for telling your personal story. And, it's very, very emotional. I think everyone in the room now can really feel, the emotion from it. But I just wanted to ask a question just in relation to Kilmira, because I know people in the past that have gone through Kilmira and they can't, it worked for a while, but then afterwards, they went back to addiction. Would you feel, I felt that maybe after, say, this is a 12-week program, that after maybe 6 weeks, it might be more beneficial if they were maybe, if they did have family home to go home to, or able to spend the weekend, every now and again, to maybe experience, I suppose, temptation and see how they actually dealt with that and then go back. Whereas I sort of felt with some of the program, because it's almost like you're in a bubble and then you're popped back out again and expected to deal with everything. I don't know, what your thoughts be on that?
Yeah.
Want to do people hear, Bernie, because I noticed that people hear Bernie without the microphone? What's that?
Yeah, so basically my experience at Coomera was, as you said, for the 12 weeks, I was safe.
Yeah.
There was no drink coming to me. I had everyone there that I wanted to talk to. If I needed support or help with anything, it was all within a 30 seconds away from me. The issue was the end of my 12 weeks. I was literally walking out the door. My mother and father were after driving up my van the day before, because in Coomera you can walk out anytime you want. It's up to yourself whether you want to stay in it or not. So they dropped up my van the night before, and it was very tempting, I'll tell you now, not to go out and go into it. But the following day, when I got out and sat in that van, and when I got out, and I remember there was a garage about 5 minutes down the road. When I got to the garage, I walked in, and the first thing I got was a breakfast roll and a bottle of Lucasade. And I remember standing at the counter, and right beside me was an off license.
Yeah.
Right there, right beside me. And I genuinely, to me, it could have been, it felt like 2 hours. I'd say maybe I could have stood there for maybe 30 seconds, 40 seconds. And I thought to myself, this is going to be harder than what any of them ever told me. Like, if I wanted now, I can just literally go get that, like.
Yeah.
And the whole 12 weeks has gone out the window. To people down there that actually, in my opinion, cared about my future or cared about my well-being, what can they actually do? Because they have another 60 or 70 me down there that they're trying to help now. They don't have the resources, or they don't have like the help in order. Like, I done that in Galway. I'm from Kilkenny.
Yeah.
So again, I'm one of the lucky ones, because I had a really strong family around me. And I suppose through me working like with the traveller movement in Kilkenny and that from a young age, I would have had a lot of people that worked in a lot of the services kind of staying in touch with my family when I was in treatment, asking, when is he out? Does he need anything? This, that and the other. So I was blessed. I was able to walk out, and I suppose what I'm just after saying there makes it sound like I was able to walk straight into all the services what I needed. I wasn't. The fact that I felt that I was a traveller blocked me, because realistically what should have been done, like with Coomera, the likes of Coomera, Susie, what should have been done, there should be people, and I don't care what anyone says, there should be funding put in place for anywhere like that has one specific person that does a personal care plan with each person in the season. Let that be if they need housing, if they need employment, if they need a medical card, if they need their dole sorted out, if they need access to their children, if they need an annulment, if they need a divorce. Because when you're in there, you're trying to get your appetite in order. Never mind your whole life. So when you walk out, the first thing you're realising is, back on my own again. No one gives a continental shit about me. Like, that time in Coomera, I was lucky because one of the counsellors in there would have mixed a lot with travellers and stuff. And he kind of, I suppose, when I was the days I found it tough, he brought me on under his wing. The whole getting out for the weekends thing, me personally, I don't think it would have worked for me. I think the 12 staying in there for the 12 weeks, not having your phone, that worked for me because it allowed me the space and the time for me to try and sort out the issues that I had going on in my own head without worrying about whether Liverpool bet Man United. Without worrying about whether Henry Shefflin was going to retire or not. So now it could be completely different for other people, but for me,
I think you're right.
The bubble was the best place I could be, but there could have been a lot more put in place when that bubble busted. If that helps.
It does. And more legs. Okay, is there anyone else?
One of the things I suppose is like, what can services do to support the crisis intervention piece? And I think there's a gap where someone goes and presents to A&E with a crisis around suicidal ideation, and they're assessed to be not in need of a bed, and they're sent home. And I think this is something that I would experience in the work I do.
Of course.
People will be sent home, and they might go back again another time, and they're sent home again. And then the next time they go, they don't come back because they're gone, they've died. And I suppose that crisis intervention piece seems to be a huge gap. Is there 1, 2, 3 things that you would say services need to look at
Yeah, I think it's really, really important, Petra, that we actually have a person who's qualified that works with the travel NGOs, right? I think there's two kinds of needs at the moment in the travel community. First of all, we have crisis after crisis after crisis in sites, in group housing schemes, and the whole lot. We actually need a qualified therapist or counsellor to actually work in that area. And I mean, if we're going to invest in a community, you need to invest properly. I think our community, you need to have somebody, not just a 9 to 5 job. It needs to be a 24-hour job, if you know what I mean, because it's constant chaos after chaos, crisis after crisis. I think that's one gap that we could fulfill. And then the other person is the buffer between the services and the traveller community. And like the Garda Síochána, I was just talking about, sorry, I keep talking about the Garda Síochána, but here the people that we would ring when emergency, because you would be the first people that we'd have contact with. And most travellers have a good relationship with guards. But you'd know the crisis that we'd actually have on site. And I think it's having that person that the likes of Jim O'Brien, the likes of myself, other travellers across Ireland and settled people who are qualified in the area but don't have the qualifications. And I believe anyone that works in this area has to be proper qualified. It'd be great if it was a traveller. If not, it need not be for the moment. But at the moment, we're at a crisis point. We need that person to be qualified, to be able to work as a buffer between the services and the traveller community and the agencies around, that the agencies are aware. Like in some incidents, we have great psychiatrists that will take the time to have the understanding and the analysis of what's happening in the community. Now, they don't get paid that extra time or whatever, but they just take the time from a personal note because they just have a deep heart and empathy and compassion. And when you're going in with families and you're able to explain, look, this is the history, the generations of trauma that this particular individual has faced and the community has faced. And then they're deepening their understanding and they're looking at the gaps in the services and saying, okay, I can provide this, but there's a gap in the community. You need to go and lobby for that. And the psychiatrists will be very honest with you and the services will be very honest with you. We just don't have that service to meet your need for your community. And I think that is vital. Otherwise, how can we try and prevent people from dying? Even if we give it a try, even if service providers could say to their managers and the CEOs and executives, here's a proposal on the table. Let's give it a chance for 2 years. Let's do a piece of research. Let's analyse it. See did anything progress happen out of it. See did we save any lives compared to 2 years ago. And then say, is it a value for money or it's rubbish? Let's give it a go anyway. At least our lives are worth something to try and help us to keep our people alive. I keep saying to travellers, please stay with us. But it's very hard for travellers to stay with us when the only thing that they have against them sometimes is to kill their pain, is to leave this world. And that's an awful statement to be saying, but it is the real reality of what's happening.
It's just what you're saying there, Matt. Experience, I think you can have one person within an organisation, within a service that really sees, how the need for connection and everything. But if it's not actually instilled, if cultural competency isn't actually together within the whole organisation, so it's not just one person. Because when they leave.
Yes, right. This is it. That's right. That's why it's so important that, in a traveller NGO, you're talking about the vast majority now at this stage are members of the traveller community. You're talking about a qualified person working in that setting is actually training nearly, if they train a certain part of the community, they're actually training the wider community. They're sending out the messages, they're positive messages. And I think I think what Bernard said, it strikes me about two young boys I've been working with about a month ago. And, the internalized depression because of the external, prejudice, racism, discrimination. I hate calling them words. I'd rather say prejudice rather than words, but it is what it is. Saying, Mags, look, we're afraid now to go out and say that we want help because the 3 times that we looked for help, we couldn't get help. And now we're telling them that we only pretended that we needed help. That's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. We're saying, and the likes of Bernie and people like myself and Jim O'Brien and other, settled people and travellers across Ireland are trying to say, please reach out for help. But reach out for help, there's no help there. And even I've talked to settled people, who are very good friends of mine, who come from wealthy backgrounds, and they say, Margaret, we have to pay for that service, and even that service is not as good as you think it is. So be very mindful. There's very limited services in Ireland, whether you're a traveller or settled. And then I'm just trying to say, okay, I totally understand that, but if we could just get some bit of limited services that you're talking about,
Well, I suppose I've heard the same services provided to everybody. My argument back has always been, well, it's not working for everybody, and it's definitely not working for the most vulnerable.
Definitely. Exactly, and if you go into psychiatric services, I've been in a lot of psychiatric services and worked with people that work in the service, and they come with their own prejudice, they come with their own stereotype, and they're afraid of imagine if the likes of young Bernie there, or young man there, young big man, they're actually afraid, and they'll say it to me, if we build up a relationship, say, Mags, look, we're afraid, so what I say, but don't make him like a zombie. Help him to treat him as somebody that has psychosis or whatever services. Don't let your prejudice get in the better of you, that actually he's on so much drugs now, that he's on something for, Muhammad Ali had it, what was it? Parkinson's disease. So he's on antidepressants, on tablets for Parkinson's disease, when he went in with a mental health problem. You know what I mean? So there's all these kind of, because of all the different side effects. So you're talking about a young guy, young woman, been on 12 tablets 4 times a day, when we should be looking at the root causes of why that young person is in that services. Why are travellers dying every minute of the day? And I think at the moment we're trying to keep travellers alive. They're the 2 services I would ask for at the moment. I think, politically, I think it's up for the likes of me and other travellers to try and change the political minds of government, to actually undo the damage that has been done to us as a traveller community. We're not settled people. We don't want to be settled people. We're not failed settled people. We're proud Indigenous people. And the vast majority of us hold our head high. But it's very hard to keep our young people alive saying all that.
Can I just say something, Jim, as regards to services? Like, me, as my little boy, my youngest little boy only started baby infants there Monday. And me as a parent, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to use a teacher. There's nothing against teachers. I'm just using the teacher as an example. The government knows that Irish travellers are different to mainstream society. Settled people knows it. Travellers know it. Might be 1,000 miles different, but we're different.
Yeah.
We're the indigenous people of Ireland. So surely to God, every service provider in this country somehow links in with a traveller.
Yeah.
Every single provider. One of the things that I think could really, really, really benefit, if someone came to me in the morning and said to me, Bernie, what do you think could be a stepping stone as to cutting out? Not all the suicide or whatever, but it'll definitely help benefit. Yeah. I genuinely believe that any service provider has any interaction
Yeah.
with a member of the travelling community, it should be made mandatory that they have TCAT training. Not training from the government, not training from HSE, not training from some fella down in Kilkenny that thinks he knows it all about travellers, not training from me because I think I know I'm a traveller. The likes of Jim, get the likes of Jim, Mags, very carefully handpick 8, 9 dedicated advocates that have been there for a long time, that are trusted by the community, and that the community know have their truly at their heart have the best issues and are the best positivity outcomes for the community. Get them into a room with the ministers or the relevant powers that be. Give them the opportunity to come up with the TCAT training. And not like every county have their own one. A national traveller culture awareness training programme. One that the lads know will work. Don't get travellers that are out of touch with travellers. It can't be just someone from the 3 or 4 national organisations. It can't be just a group of travellers from Dublin. It has to be a traveller that lives in the heart of the busiest city in Ireland to a traveller that lives in the furthest part of civilization in Ireland. Because it's between them two people. That's the travelling community. That's the people that we need to help. But as long as it's not, and I genuinely mean this, like, and a lot of people might disagree with me, but until that's made mandatory, it won't happen, because not enough people are going to take on the training that's needed. A lot of people might want to take it, a lot of people, but unfortunately some people might think, well, I'm not going to be the first person in my workplace to turn around and say, maybe we need to take traveller cultural awareness training. Maybe that'll give us a better understanding of how a traveller single mother with 4 young children, how much she struggles at 7 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning to get her 4 children to school because she's living 8 miles away. The local bus company won't drive out that far to collect her children from school. She can't ask her brother-in-laws because they can't come to her on their own because the whole place is going to talk about them. That's the type of things they need to deal with. The main root of the problems. Because all of a sudden, if that young single or separated traveller mother gets the help of getting her children out to school, or gets the help of an after school, or even gets the help of getting one of them into play school or preschool, then all of a sudden her mental health is improved. That's one less traveller woman or one less traveller man that thinks, well, I'm taught my whole life I'm not good enough. I'm taught my whole life I'm not worthy of somewhere in this world. Well, do you know what? Fuck it. Today the Irish people and like the Irish society have turned around and said, do you know what? We will help you. Your child is worthy of this. You are worthy of getting that half an hour peace of mind in your own. If it's only to get a cup of tea to sit down and watch on Coronation Street.
Yeah.
But that's the difference of saving someone's life. That's how close anyone that thinks about suicide or mental health, them small little things, that's the difference of saving someone's life. How simple is it for me to pick up a fishing rod and walk through 4 fields to go to a river?
That's right.
That saves my life.
And you know what? And I totally agree with Bernard, because I went out into the managed trailers and houses and seen little children as young as 5 and 6 who have anxiety. And a woman would say to me, "Man, what do you think is going on with this child?" And I'm not a specialist by any means. And I bring them to a program that we'd have called the Family Learning Program. And we'd see that they get calm, but actually the child have anxiety going to school alone because of how he or she is going to be treated in the school. And even sending our children to school, we're trying to be right, we're trying to do right, we're doing wrong for doing right, because we're trying to be good parents, Like every parent is trying to do good, send our children to school. But then on the other hand, we have children who have severe anxiety because of what they face in school. And like even when you heard Bernard there, the school parties, you wasn't invited to. That still happens. Children still back at the classroom, still told that they're stupid indirectly. And the fear of God, the fear of God is in traveller children going to school. And our first experience of racism, discrimination, systematic racism, and prejudice is in the school. That's where it starts for our children. And that's where the anxiety and the anticipated anxiety. And every traveller in this room, and every traveller across Ireland suffers with anticipated anxiety. I can be sure to God, the minute I leave here and talk to settled people and be friends with settled people, and I go down there to the local shop, the minute I go to that door, I will suffer with anticipated anxiety. Will I be told, excuse me, ma'am, you have to leave?
Yeah.
So that's a fact. That's our normal living. And I'd love to tell you a wonderful story and brush it up and say, life is wonderful. Yes, there's parts of who we are as people, to our traditions, our way of life is brilliant. Some parts of our culture has changed, like all cultures change over a decade. And I think the likes of the pressure that's on what Bernard said about young traveller men and traveller fathers, traveller women to get their children to school because they want to feel, I'm a good mother. I've sent my child to school. I don't want the anxiety to say, you're to blame because you're the traveller. You didn't send your child to school. But at least I want to say to myself tomorrow morning, but at least I sent my children to school. I had them washed ready lunch books and I sent them to school. So God knows I've done my bit as a mother, as a father, to take that anxiety away from you. But then when you send your child to school, you come back and you find out, all these stories and you're trying to ignore it and you're trying to give them the necessary tools and skills to be able to survive in an education system that actually tells the child there's no place there for you. And let me be very honest, our children are very intelligent, highly intelligent. Do they know how to get expelled? Very fast, very quick to get out of there. Because they know they're not wanted there. And they'll tell you when they come home, Mommy, you told me if I was this and I done this and I done that, whatever, Mommy, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm getting out of that school as fast as I can. So what's the best way? I remember I was in Belfast one time and a young travelling boy came over to me and I said, you're a great little boy, I said, for going to school. Keep it up. And he said, I'll tell you, Margaret, he said, I'm getting thrown out of school tomorrow. And I said, why, son, would you do that? I'll tell you why. He was telling me all the stories. And he said, I'm throwing a chair through the window. And I said, please, son, don't do that. And he said, no, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, what the principal done to me, he said, he nearly choked me. And he said, all the settled children were laughing. He said, and the whole lot, I ain't getting out there. At least I'll get a bit of work with me, Daddy. And I was trying to coax him, don't do it. And in my head, I was thinking, he's better Joan throw the chair out the window, but he's better off to get out of there, to stay alive. And I met Bernard Devlin, and she said, Mag, she said, that young fella threw the chair out the window. And I just said, I wouldn't laugh in front of the child. I just said, I knew he was going to leave. Because he couldn't suffer that amount of pressure every day. It's not fair on our children to be able to accept that, Anyway, I'm going to shut up now. Shut up and talking.
We actually call it abuse of authority, which as a travel organisation we come across all the time, but you have to call it out. Because where a person has authority, if they're allowed to abuse it, what chance is the most vulnerable in society? Just on that, everything is not all negative.
No.
And we have to say that's just a topic that we're talking about today. It is hard hitting, it is reality, it is truth. But just as Marge was talking about and Bernie was talking about, specific people in society that will have that skill, that extra level, which is not there at the minute when we're talking about travellers here today. But what we do have, and it's been tried and tested, I remember we were one of the first local travel organisations that took up in the local council. Now, in the beginning, I had my doubts because I was saying, okay, how is this going to work? We started, it was a pilot. And I would say in the first couple of months, it was working with travel women. If I wanted to get across the door with travel men.
Yeah.
And the difficulty you have there, and I'm going to use a bit of gammon there, some of you might understand it, some of you might not. I'm going to explain what it means. So a travel man is looking at a travel man going to a door where it's known for you're talking to someone that's fluent, right? So he's talking and he sees his first cousin or his uncle or whatever. Here's Jim going over there, he must be worried. So he's mad because he's going into that place. Now Jim is going over there because he's lost someone in the family.
Yeah.
He needs someone to talk to. So he got the local help and the local support. To convince him to talk him through the talk. The next word I'm going to use, the counsellor that we're introduced to, and this is where we're talking about the skill of the next line of people, is cultural appropriate. And each of the counsellors that are under the council service, that Susie represents, are culturally appropriate because training does exist. That's why I would say, I would look at Bray, and I've been working over a number of decades, and council as a profession is probably one of the longest out there. But it hasn't worked when it comes to travellers. Because over the years, before we were introduced to the traveller health service locally, I had councils that came to me and said, I had such a person that was referred to me, but I'm sorry, I don't understand. I don't understand where they're coming from. But at least we were honest.
Yeah.
By having the travel council service, which I'm sure you're aware
Without a doubt.
it's working because there's defined training, culturally appropriate training, to make that person understand where the traveller is coming from. So straight away, we have a mixture between men and females that are taken up on the local travel council service. The most important thing, they're not ashamed. Why should they be? They're not ashamed. It's like addiction. We open up our own bread. There's an addiction problem, but there's an addiction problem everywhere there's a population of travellers. But in not everywhere where there's travellers and population of travellers, they're at the level of admitting it.
Yeah.
I can say to you, it took me as a traveller man 20 years to get the travellers to admit it. Because it always has been a problem. I'd be out there in the beginning, in the early 2000s, when the task force came to Bray. I wanted a piece of that funding to develop what we have today. But even among travel men, and especially the younger travel men, both Bray and Wycliffe, all belong to me, don't talk about things like that because it's not a travel thing. So maybe I go to a football field in the summer months, down to Rathmill or whatever, and some of my double ball first cousins will come to me. They like what they're doing here, but don't talk about things that. And I knew. So I kept persevering. So Great Travellers is the other end of this church. We're in that building now 20 years, just March on by. And what I see is traveller men and women coming in. They don't need appointments in the travel community. They come in when they have a problem.
Yeah.
And we have dedication. Our workers, which is made up of travellers and settled. I've no honours in this degree. I just have my own 30 years of hard graft. Whether my community was going to accept me, Bernie, or not. And when I'm looking at, they come in the doors and come in accommodation. We have enough skilled people that will give them the guidance and give them the help and give them the support to help them through accommodation. But we're not accommodation workers. Because sometimes, and you're an activist like myself, Max, and you're at it for a long, long time, like myself, sometimes you think you have a magic wand.
I know.
If you have a problem, I mean, I laugh about this today, but I had travellers coming to me, Jim, I want a bungalow and I want 3 acres.
So you saw the wife.
And there's me in a council house, in the middle of an estate, and I'm going with them, like. And over the years I have, but travellers,
But
But I don't hear as much as that now because I think to myself, Jesus Christ, all these years, a bungalow, maybe it went down to no acres, but a bungalow in a nice sort of area in Garden County. Like they come to you explain a case where a mother have a child that's sick and think you're a doctor. So all we can do is just guide them. And that's why everything is not negative.
no, without a doubt,
No. We have to also talk about our primary healthcare programs in Ireland as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say to you, 83, 84% of the travellers are long-term unemployed.
Yeah.
I hate when that's being said. The biggest employer in the travelling community is community development and the primary healthcare. You take that away, I'd say you're up to 98%.
Without a doubt.
But there's reasons, of course there's reasons why travellers are the fear factor of taking employment. But again, you have to look at what you've seen in the past as role models.
Yeah.
Like what I seen on social media a couple of months ago, a mother and her son and him in a Garda uniform. How great was that? Even though I knew deep down that there are already travellers out there, male and female, that have taken up profession in surgeons and doctors. But the sad thing about it, they have to hide their identity. So when I see something like that, I say, yes, that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need more and more role models. And I think that we're looking at today, I go back when I first started, 20 years ago, you wouldn't count in your hand how many male or female travellers were activists at the time.
That's right.
There wasn't that many.
And I think it's important, years ago we used to go round and round in circles because we thought all the government policy was going to bring about change for us. And now that we've worked with our community really, really deep, we actually have solutions to bring forward. And they're two of the solutions that we brought forward. But we have a lot of the answers ourselves as a community. And I think, when you work with oppressed people who have been oppressed all their life, of course, and they've never been asked, what do you really want? And what is consultation? What does real consultation mean? I mean, and you spend enough time with people and be able to figure out or whatever, what's there, what's not there. And I think it is very political when we come to traveller accommodation, because we didn't want standard accommodation. We didn't want to live in concentration camps. We didn't want to be settled people. It's very, very political. And that has to change. We need to build culture to appropriate accommodation to meet the needs of the traveller community. By putting travellers, I'm not saying for all travellers, but the majority of travellers, like I can tell you, to my family who has money, some of them that does have money, they buy their own sites out the country, not too far, and they build their own chalets. If it's an old broken down bungalow, and they'll have their own shed for horses or scrap or whatever. It won't be in a group housing scheme, it won't be in a halting site, and it surely won't be in a private estate. So any traveller, so I think we have the answers to a lot of the issues that is facing us, and actually how the issues that is facing us has a contributing effect on settled people, because we don't want to be a nuisance. We don't want to be causing settled people trouble or bother or whatever. We just need to live with respect. We need to respect settled people. Settled people need to respect us. I think there's a way forward in terms of building bridges between travellers and settled people. Now, I've often said this to political people that have worked at a national level. How do we get Irish society, Irish settled people, to understand where we're coming from in terms of winning the hearts and minds of settled people? And they often say, people don't mean to be nasty. And I don't think any individual wakes up in the morning and decides, I'm going to hate a black person, I'm going to hate a traveller, I'm going to hate a Romanian, or I'm going to hate a refugee that's coming from, I don't know, Western European country. I don't think anyone does that societally. But look, I think, Jim, what we're trying to say is, as individuals, if we could help are the people that are in power, and if you could send that message back out to your own family, your colleagues, of what you've heard today, we would really appreciate it.
Okay, if there's any more, anyone has any further questions, I want to try and finalize it now.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
just from the school's perspective, from a local secondary school here in Bray, there's a local primary Catholic school in Bray, we would take a lot of students from that. Just, I know you said from the community there's answers, maybe, I'm just wondering if any advice for us in secondary school, we struggle to retain after a certain age, particularly the boys, and very, very bright lads coming through, who do anything as you said, but they are determined that they're going and and similarly for experiences with some of the girls. I mean, we tried our best. You mentioned don't put them in small classes, don't do this.
Yeah.
And again,
We've created a family learning program. I wrote a program from looking at young traveller children's attitude towards primary school, and it starts at primary school, as you know. And looking at designing a program, we would have designed a program called the Family Learning Program that would have worked with primary school children up to secondary school children, and it actually would give them necessary tools and skills and values in education. So I'll give you one example. So I might ask Jim, I'd say to him, you go and study, what would you like to study? And he might say bees. So you do a whole project for 3 months and studying bees or whatever, and he'd understand, or she'd understand, that actually I'm quite intelligent. So they internalised what they've been told in school, and it actually gives them the opportunity to stay in school. I think that's the way forward, in my opinion.
that's kind of the approach we would take.
Yeah, of course. But I just think by the time you get to secondary school, a lot of the damage is being done.
But there's also in not all areas where there's a population of travellers, education person speaking is to my heart. I'm all about male and female, try and keep them in school, and the possibility of moving on to secondary, moving on to third level, even college, and becoming some. Now, I have to say positively, the year is 2024, there's more and more travellers that are actually staying in the school system than it was maybe 10 years ago.
And we're seeing more and more families, the parents supporting us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Without a doubt.
That's what you mentioned.
But where
culture that they're still faced
but where it does exist, and as I said earlier, it doesn't exist in all areas, there is designated educational officers.
Yeah.
We actually have one in Bray, and we're blessed to have one in Bray, because that was the missing link between the mainstream schools and the travellers.
Yeah.
And that's actually working. I'm not saying perfect. Again, I go back to no magic wand, but we're desperately, you still got tradition with traveller mail, but you're still got.
But I suppose, you have to understand a lot of the damage has been done to them children by the time the point that they get to secondary school. About the little bit of status that they feel that they're going to get is get a job, get married as fast as we can, get out of here. The quick, I think the fix or the working with children to undo them starts at primary up to secondary. By the time you get travel children in secondary school, a lot is, I need to get out of here fast, quick.
The transition from some of the students who in St. Kieran as a traveller in primary school to then mainstream school is huge. We do work with schools on that.
One of the things that I always thought of was, like, you have to stay in school, you're 16. So in general, that's kind of fourth year, transition year, third year, fourth year. So you can have all these, like, I suppose you can have all these people that's going to make sure you stay in school. You can have whatever people coming in from this organisation, that organisation, telling you why you should stay in school, what's going to change, so on, so on. Or else schools can go out to the local traveller organisations, because people, the likes of Jim and Wicklow, you say, Jim knows travellers in Wicklow that have stayed on and done their leaving cert or whatever. The likes of me, we say, right? So rather than getting people going in telling young people why they should stay in school, why it's going to change their life, and they're sitting there, because I would have done this, I would have looked at some fella coming in going, what in the name of Jesus do you know about being a traveller and going to school? Instead of, why not go get young travellers or travellers that have sat and done their junior cert, that have sat and done their leaving cert, men and women, the likes of me in Kilkenny, just for instance, get me to go to talk to a school in Kilkenny and let me sit down with the young travellers, and not just the travellers, with the class, and say, look, right, what you're listening to at the moment, they're telling you, oh, you're not going to be a man if you have to go get a job, or you have to go to... I didn't. I didn't leave school. I stayed on school.
And just saying, on a very positive note, we will travel to Martin with his graduation as a teacher.
Brilliant.
Well done. It's fantastic.
And they're the likes, it's the likes of them people, and even just people maybe that just done their leaving cert and never went on to or third level education. But it's time to, I suppose, like Jim and Mags were saying, yeah, the traveller community, it's time that the government and whoever, the people in power, stop looking at us and thinking, well, we have to help him. We have to do this. We have to do that. We're clever enough. We're definitely brave enough. We're intelligent enough. And we're all close enough.
Exactly.
Our community, we have the people within the community to care and look and decide what's best for us ourselves.
Yeah.
That's not me saying that 10 travellers get to sit around a table and go, this is the future of travellers. We get our own laws and do... That's not what I'm saying.
No.
What I'm saying is, we don't need... Traveller young people don't need settled people or whatever going in and telling them why travellers should stay in school. What they need is travellers who have stayed in school to go into the schools to tell them why they should stay in school.
Yeah.
More and more positive stories.
The domino effect.
And just to finish on a positive note, just to finish on a positive note, and maybe touch on something there, more and more role models. Mightn't be a massive number or a big number, but certainly we, a local travel organisation, we are aware of young travellers, both male and female, in their 20s, are going back to education.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
are looking for the help, and that can't be discounted. You know, we're looking at the positives, and other travellers then to look at, well, there's no shame
No.
if you're 28 or 29. Age is just a number when it comes to education.
Sure.
You have to see the role model.
They do indeed.
This
Absolutely, you don't see it.
this is what we touched on earlier on, Dave. We have populations of travellers all over Ireland. But the more role models that we see, and I'm looking at how many male and female traveller activists, you can't count them in one hand, Mike.
That's right.
There is so many of them, and that's why I'm looking at the young travellers in particular, are all coming out now, and they're all saying, look, we want to change our lives, we want to do something about it.
Yeah.
Look, I know folks, it's just nearly on the hour. I know people might be a little bit hungry with our side out our sandwiches and our tea and coffee, and if I finish at that, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. Just watch out for the next edition. I don't want to